Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good evening. How are you doing, Amit?
Doing good.
All right. I think it's been pretty exciting. I know there's NFL playoffs going on, but let's first focus on the Patriots' point of view. A lot of news that has happened on the Patriots front. I've been spending a lot of time listening to some of the interviews of Mike Vrabel, who is an ex-Patriot, won 3 Super Bowls, played, I think, 8 years, great defensive guy, caught a few offense touchdowns from Tom Brady. Tennessee coach, went to Cleveland, and then he's now back with the Patriots. New look. Wanted to hear your impression on Mike Vrabel, what you've heard so far, not just from him, but also from other articles that you typically read on the Patriots. So, wanted to give you the floor and give some time to talk, and then let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. It's a pretty decisive move. They knew whom they wanted and they acted on it. And I think he's probably the top option on the market. So I think there's some credit that goes to them for getting the top option on the market, right? So I like that a lot. I mean, there's a part of me where I was hoping they would interview a little bit more, right? Few more coaches, get some ideas and stuff like that. So you can't have everything, right? I was intrigued by the Johnson option as well. So I think there was some hope there. I mean, he's been in this circuit for 3 years now, and he's decided to go back every time, because he wasn't ready. So that's great, right? Like, so he could be more ready than people think he is. But this was good. Well, I like it. I like the move.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think going back to what happened, Kraft, we saw the passing of the torch. I don't know if it's called the passing of the torch from Belichick to Mayo. I think it was it was done in the best interest of both of them. They knew this time had come. And, you can call it a firing, you can call it the mutual parting of ways, but then the Mayo experiment went on for a year. Initially, I think both of us were willing to give Mayo a chance. In fact, we even wanted to give Mayo the second year chance after a while. But I do think that, it seemed that this was a something that was written in his contract that he would be the successor, and then they were going to take a chance. Now, if last or this season turned out to be better than Belichick's last year, like 4-13, say they win like 8 games, 9 games, they have and they make some good progress. I still think Mayo would have been the coach, but I think what you saw there was a series of unfortunate incidents. The defense regressed terribly. You did not start Drake May when all the other teams, and we don't know where Drake May was from a standpoint of maturity, other than like when you look at Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. You looked the first 2 games of Bo Nix, it looked like he was a fish out of water, but he did prove to be a pretty serviceable quarterback. And then, he took the team to the playoffs. Give credit to Sean Payton. So your things
Yeah.
on, we could spend a little bit time on what went wrong for Mayo that led to Rabel stepping in to be the coach.
Yeah, by the way, on that Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels comparison, right? They probably played, I don't know the exact number, but they've played at least 2 times the number of games that Drake May has played in college, right? Like Bo Nix was there for like 5, 6 years total. So he's been a starter for a long time. And Jaden Daniels too. And that was the knock on May that he just hasn't played enough college football. So all I'm saying is I'm actually encouraged by that. To me, that just means like the upside is higher for Drake May, and he showed enough promise to deserve the job of a starter in the league already, even with huge number of college starts. So as long as he's and every indication shows he has the right mental makeup. So as long as he has the right attitude, he puts in the effort and gets some solid coaching. I mean, he should continue to improve. So it's bright that way. But yeah, I don't know if we should discuss that much of what went wrong. I think the biggest reason was lack of confidence that this is going to get turned around. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think there was any confidence in figuring out how to turn this around. That led to it, right? Like, and there are many parts to it, but I think that was probably the biggest thing, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. And a couple of things I heard right away from Rabel. He did talk about he definitely admitted, like, Drake May is a quarterback that he can work with. I think he was asked by Tommy Curran on his interview that, was one of the reasons why he chose New England, because of the fact that he saw what he saw in Drake May. And that's definitely possible. The other thing Mike Vrabel alluded to openly, and again, you and I both know when coaches come into any new team, and we know Vrabel. I mean, he was being a coach, or he was a coach of the year. He took his team to the AFC Championship. He ended Brady's career in New England in a defensive game. But I think the first thing he talked about was building the offensive line around the quarterback. And that was very apparent. And then that's something that we'll cover in the next topic is in the playoffs. When you look at any quarterback, whether it's Jaden Daniels or even like, yes, I was watching the Monday night game with Matthew Stafford. How many times did you see like Stafford being touched by the wanted Minnesota defense? Not many times. The amount of time each of these quarterbacks had to throw the ball, and in some cases, Jaden Daniels had close to like 4 to 5 seconds. Obviously, he's a very good quarterback. He can move. He's a mobile quarterback. And when you look at the playoffs, like all the quarterbacks that you see in the playoffs right now, most of them are mobile quarterbacks. There are not many pocket passers right now in the playoffs. And I think, but you need a good offensive line to support that. Drake May was a player who can throw in the pocket, but he's also someone who takes off. But the poor offensive line was definitely that led to the downfall that Mayo could not fix it. Now I don't know what's going to happen with Alex Van Pelt. I've not heard anything. All I heard was from a personal standpoint, Elliot Wolf still stays. Nothing on Covington, but seems like Rabel did say that there's a long list of offensive coordinator, like including Doc
They'll
McDaniel.
probably they'll probably interview him as part of that. Alex Van Pelt as part of those candidates, I would assume, because there is something to be said about. Like I personally didn't believe like play calling was in the top 5 list of our big problems for the season. I think it was fine for the most part. I mean, I remember back in the day when everything was humming with Brady and McDaniels, people used to criticize McDaniels' play calling too, nitpicking those things. So I mean, no coordinator is going to get it right. I think, and it started a little bit shady, but it got better with Alex Van Pelt. In fact, if you see what he did with Joe Milton, especially, like there's a lot of like RPOs and stuff like that. So he's shown the willingness. He just didn't have the horses, right? So I mean, I would not be opposed to that turning out to be the option as well, because the benefit there would be you have continuity in your nomenclature, which is really important. By the way, yes, offensive line is important, but I don't think, for example, Washington Commanders have a great offensive line. I think they're okay. I think a lot of things go into it. I think the quarterback play matters. You need to have receivers. I mean, he is McLaurin, and there's one more guy in there.
Brown.
Right, he's got a couple of Brown. Brown, I think he kind of played on well only in this game. I don't think he's a regular for him, but he's got a better tool cast around him, right, than May, and I think scheme, coaching, those kind of things matter too. So yes, it's all of it. I agree. I mean, it's if you don't have the O-line talent, there's only so many things you can do to hide that. I agree, but I mean, look at Joe Burrow, right? He survived. It's not a good existence because he's gotten injured and all that, but he's managed to post all kinds of ridiculous numbers behind a pretty shaky. Isn't he like the second most sacked quarterback or something? Like
Yeah.
he's in the top 5 sack quarterbacks.
Yep. That's
I
true.
live with but yeah. So whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like they'll have to hire. They'll have to hire the right coaches. They'll have to draft well. They'll have to. I think free agency is probably even more important than the draft. All these things have to work well for able to show improvement.
Yep. So I think, we talked about the free agency, but now let's talk very quickly, pivot to, what do the Patriots need at this point? I know one of the things that watching these games, it was apparent that the talent level in all phases of the game, when you compare the Patriots to any team that they were playing, they looked like they were definitely, I think from a talent standpoint, it was much to be desired, I would call it. Their talent was definitely lacking. I think we talked about receivers not able to get the separation. Defensively, they were not able to stop a single team. Both sometimes you think the other team would just run all over you. Sometimes they would just pass all over you. So there was no consistency in any department, and that clearly is attributed to talent. And the question is going to be, how does Rabel, and I know they do have $130 million in salary cap, so I think they do have the money to spend. Now, depends on who will be available from that standpoint from a skill position players, and then offensive line, and then the defense as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, offense, I think quarterback we are set. Tight ends, we could use a younger player for sure. So maybe we draft someone, but at least, it's more than satisfactory. They did pretty well this season. So you could see that continuing, maybe. Running backs, you could always improve it, maybe get a younger guy in there. But again, if the running backs that we have right now, assuming that they don't fumble, if you give them a better offensive line, I think they're good enough. Maybe in future years we can make them great, right? But it's good enough. So really on offense, it's the offensive line and mainly the tackle positions and definitely the receivers. Like I'm not in love with any receiver on the roster right now. Like yeah, Booty had his moments, but he's like a number 3, number 4 guy. Even Pop Douglas was okay, good, not great, right? So if we can upgrade the slot position, like I think we need like 2, 3. We literally, like, you remember like the 2000 season, we got Wes Walker, we got Randy
Oh, you mean
Moss.
2007 series?
Seven,
No,
right? Yeah, seventh season, right? We got Randy Moss, we got Wes Welker, and we got that
Dante
other
Stallworth.
guy.
Dante
Who?
Stallworth. Dante
Dante
Stallworth.
Stallworth. Right. And we acquired all 3 of them in the same year, I think. So I think we need something like that, right? So like the equivalent of Randy Moss would be, I mean, you try to get an AJ Brown or someone of that, or T Higgins or someone of that caliber.
Yeah, and talking about AJ Brown, I mean, he's someone who's was coached by Rabel in Tennessee.
Right.
So, and then I don't know if he's disgruntled yet in Philadelphia, depending on how far Philadelphia goes, and he would want to go into a place where there's
Yeah.
a coach that he knows very well. So I think more than Higgins is someone I don't see him coming just because Burrow already made a comment about saying that he needs to sign his players.
Yeah, but Burrow will say that. Like they need to have money to do it. I don't know what their cap situation is.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
some right, like they can't. They want to improve their defense. Their defense is what sunk them, right? So then they'll have to invest some money there too. They can't just keep feeding the offense. I don't know. But then again, seeing teams like Kansas City and Miami keep like so many highly paid players, I know it's doable. It's a matter of just manipulating the cap, right? Like or like just pushing it out in future years. There's like so much leeway teams have. So if they want to, I think they can get it done. Yeah. Um, but like think about it, right? So like someone of that caliber, which is Randy Moss level, then Wes Welker, who nobody knew he was going to be that good, right? So I don't know. Like we need to get lucky with maybe a draft pick or maybe some kind of a veteran who comes in and really shines here, right? And then we need a good supporting guy like how Dante Stallworth. He was not a star, but like someone who has a niche, who's established in the league. I think we need 3 guys because I think out of the remaining ones we have, I don't like Bone. I mean, he didn't do anything post his injury. He just doesn't produce, and clearly he's not a leader. He couldn't like really lead the young receiver room, and there's so many issues. He's a good guy, but I don't. So I think he's out. Javon Baker with Mike Vrabel as a coach. I would be shocked if he stays with the team. Polk, I mean, he might be a training cap cut if he doesn't show it because I think these days teams are getting better at getting production out of receivers that are drafted. You remember there used to be a time where receivers was a complete lottery, right? You draft someone in the first and second round, and he could be a total bust or whatever. I think they're coming out of college a little bit better quality these days. So for him to flop the way he did, that is definitely very concerning. I think the chances of suddenly him reviving in year 2, reviving his career, especially if there's going to be a new offensive system in place, I won't put my money on it. So I think there's a huge need, 2, 3 receivers and at least 2 tackles. And I'm a big believer. Got to. I think free agency is more important than the draft. Draft is like, man, one pick each in like, so with 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, and even the third rounders are not guaranteed to work, right? So maybe you get 2, 3 people that are good. That's not enough, and especially you need to enter the draft where you don't have one glaring need that you're forced to, like the Cole Strange pick, like where I don't know why they forced to take a guard, right, where he didn't belong. So We want to avoid that, right? So address this in free agency first, so that you don't have, you got someone in free agency for receivers, maybe a couple of tackles. So then you go on the draft based on best player available or whatever it is.
Yeah. The one thing is that there's always something you always used to tell me, right? Going back to your comment on draft versus free agency, you're not going to see the benefit in the draft unless you are a standout player for at least next 2 to 3. Well, 2 to 3 years is going to determine whether the draft was a
Worked or
bust
not.
or was a hit, right? That's going to be the case. Now, the other thing that could, let's quickly pivot to the defensive part of it, right? I mean, they definitely need an edge rusher. I mean, just watching the college football playoffs, watching Abdul Carter play against Notre Dame, he was just incredible. And I don't know if he's going to stay until 4, but the question going to be for Rabel is, does he have to take Abdul Carter, or does he want to address the larger issue at hand, which is the offensive line? That's going to be the key.
Here's my take on the defense in general, right? So, and again, I might be completely wrong. We are all speculating here. But I think losing the coaching from Belichick was an underrated loss over the offseason. Both Bill and Steve, right? Because Bill still played an active role on the defense, and Steve was a huge contributor to that. And I think something was lost because, like, if you look at it, like, you had so many players like Jonathan Jones, some of the veterans, right? Talk about lack of fundamentals. Mayo talked about that a lot of times because he would be very honest with the media, right? About lack of fundamentals, lack of tackling, lack of taking the right angles. And that's like basic football. So my hope, Sridhar, is that maybe the players are not as bad as they looked last year. Because just the year before that, they were slightly better. I think the numbers were a bit deceiving. Their numbers were really good on defense.
You're breaking up, by the way, Amit.
Oh, really? Is this better now?
You're breaking up, I think. Hold on. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So what I was saying is in 2023, our defensive numbers were better. But I think some of it was because we placed back many backup quarterbacks and all that. But I think the defense was better in 2023 compared to 2024. The players didn't change that much. We got so many of the same players back. I mean, there were hardly like one or two new players. It really didn't change a whole lot. Yes, you lost Bentley, which was a big loss, and Barmore at the beginning of the season. So I'm hoping some of these guys come back. They're healthy. They just produced the year
Keon White,
before.
maybe Keon White has a good thing back. I mean, I think he seemed to be energized. Let's see what happens.
Well, and he also has past comments to the effect that, which gave the impression that they were not coached the right way. They're not given an opportunity to improve. So I don't know what the issue was, but I'm hoping more more experienced coach coming in, defensive coach coming in. He'll get a good defensive coordinator, and I think there'll be emphasis on fundamentals and all of those things. Don't get me wrong; they still need lots of talent, but I think, just like we said, like, we probably need two really good offensive linemen and two to three good receivers. I think on defense, you need one player at each level. I think, at least. And this is to get to mediocrity, okay, by the way. I'm not saying this is to win the Super Bowl or anything like that. This is to get to, like, 7 8, I mean, 7 10, 8 9, 9 8, maybe sneak into the playoffs kind of territory. Right. One at each level. You need a kick-ass defensive pass rusher in the front four. Our defensive line got pushed around too much. And we have all these like backup guys like Daniel Ekuele and all those guys, like, they're okay, man. I mean, not as full-time starters, right? So, and plus, you don't know what's happening with Barmore long term, right? Given he had this issue come up again. You need definitely some help at the linebacker level, as they were really exposed. Like, really huge impact, difference maker player, whether through free agency or draft, on the D line, linebacker, and then definitely we need at least one kick-ass person at the corners or safety somewhere, right? Maybe a free safety or a corner. So I think we're like three good players on defense and four good players on offense away from respectability. Now, it's easier said than done.
Right. So I think there's a lot more to come. The coordinators are going to dictate how you play. Sometimes it's, that's how it is, right? I mean, if you're going to bring a new coordinator, they're going to kind of decide what their scheme is going to be, whether it's a 4-3, or a 3-4, or how do they want to play it. But then
Do you think?
offensively,
Do you think it'll change a lot? Defense?
I don't think it'll change. The players have not changed yet, unless they bring a new
Yeah.
player or.
Rabel ran the similar types of defense at Tennessee. I mean, not exactly the same. but I think it was a 3-4.
Yeah, he was a
In
three
fact,
four. Yeah,
I remember like Tennessee, couple of those drafts they traded to one spot ahead of the Patriots because they thought we would go for players like Harold Landry, and they forget who their other linebacker that they drafted in the following draft. But like they've drafted these like 3-4 linebackers, pass rushers, who've been good players for them. So I mean, he doesn't have any background in a 4-3. Our guys have played this system for a while. Got people on the roster for that, right? I would be shocked if the defense changes a lot. He'll have his wrinkle, but like base 3-4 and all, I'll be shocked if that changes.
yeah. Like remains to be seen. So there's more to come. Obviously, Rabel has not made any hires. The only constant right now is Elliot Wolf, which was kind of interesting. Just if you read between the lines, he did say during the interview, during the press conference, and also during the interview, and I just heard Tommy Karn interview too. He kind of alluded to the fact that he spent a lot of time with Elliot Wolf to the interview. Then he spent a lot of time on the interview. And he just basically said, well, I want these guys to do what they're good at, which is like scouting players and things like that. But at the same time, he made a comment, which I don't know, taking a dig. I don't know who he was taking a dig at. He said, well, he was not able to do the things that he wanted to do. So I don't
Right.
know if it was Mayo preventing him from doing some things or the ownership kind of preventing him to do certain things. I don't
I
know.
don't think, yeah,
Honestly,
I don't think Rabel will say anything against the ownership in the first week that he's hired. So yeah, I know, I saw that too.
yeah,
It's just weird.
it's just weird.
Look, I honestly do feel a bit uncomfortable about this kind of that dynamic. I mean, this is first week press conference. Everyone is going to act good, play good, all that. But like Wolf has like his lineage from, like his dad was at Green Bay, and there's a lot of like
Green
Green
Bay,
Bay kind of lineage, right? Like so they ran certain systems. They look for like offensive linemen of a certain kind, receivers of a certain kind, right? Like kind of the profile that they look for, I think is different. And Graf mentioned that they've changed up some of their grading system, right? So I think
mm,
my reading is that Elliot Wolf last year was able to convince the Crafts that look, the scouting system under Bill that we're using and grading system was outdated. It no longer fits the modern athlete, and we'll come up with something. It might take a couple of years for it to bear fruit, but we've come up with a different system. So that's, I think, what has happened, and it's possible that Kraft has told Rabel that, look, we're trying something new here. We think it's going to work. I don't want you to, like, unless you think it's absolutely wrong, I don't want you to. I want you to kind of leave it alone. So we'll see how that works. I personally always like clear lines of demarcation. Like, if you have all this fuzzy thing of, oh, we'll figure these things along the way, it leads to problems later on. So I think over the next few days, they should decide if Elliot will stays or not, and like how this relationship is going to work out. I've heard enough rumblings that Rabel is going to have the final say, which I think he should, over the 53-man roster, because Elliot Wolf had that before. So I think there's already some transfer of power, which I think should happen.
yeah, yeah.
But
I think,
we need these
and
guys
that's
to be
totally
close.
okay. And that's totally okay. And I don't think Elliot Wolf is leaving. I think at least every indication that you heard from Mike Vrabel, there was no wishy-washy answers on Wolf. It was very clear that he's in same. I think their thought process and they're quite aligned on that. Otherwise, he would have definitely made a comment on that. And it seems like everything that came from Mike Vrabel was positive about Elliot Wolf. There was nothing negative about it. So there's a lot to unpack once you have the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator and the rest of the coaching staff, including the offensive line coach. There's a lot more to come there. So
And that'll take some time because I think
yeah, that'll take up time.
they'll have to
Yes,
respect the Rooney rule, and they'll have to get a few interviews in. And I think he indicated in his press conference, right, that they're going to like really take their time to do the interviews, talk to enough people, at least for the coordinator role. So I think this will take some time, a few
I
weeks, I
agree.
think.
Yep, I agree with that too. And I think, and that's fine. That's fine, right? There's no one is rushing into any decisions. You'll get a very clear picture of how the offense is going to operate. Offense, how Vrabel has done it. He even talked about the fullback. You know, I think his thing would be, build up the offensive line, run the ball, and then maybe use Drake for any kind of like, passing situations after that. So it's going to be like, I mean, you won't see the full
I don't know
Drake
if I
throwing
like
for
that.
300. Yeah, I know you don't like that but at the same time, that's how Rabel was playing in Tennessee, and it worked. It worked
But I
well.
think we should assume that he's smart enough to adapt to the quarterback that he has.
I'm
And in
sure.
fact, he said that many times too, right? You adapt things to the players that you have, to their capacity to absorb stuff,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I think he'll be smart enough to recognize that we have someone who has big potential. He's not there yet, but he has potential. I mean, he'll be kind of very stupid of him, right? If he didn't maximize May's strengths. I mean, he's just paving the way for him to get fired 2 years later if he's not able to get most out of May. So I my reservation is with that style of offense. Like just run, 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 and then sometimes pass and play very conservative. I think all that works, but once you meet a team who either scores 10 points on you in the blink of an eye, or 14 points on you, and you're in a ditch, then you certainly have to abandon your run game when you're playing catch up, and then that's not your game, right? That's how Lamar was. That's how Baltimore was till like this year or last year, right? Where now their passing game is something solid too, right? They used to be like you stop their run somehow, which is very hard to do, but somehow, or you score points on them early, and their whole game plan would go. I don't think you want to be like that. It's a passing league, and you've got a quarterback who can make all kinds of throws, who should be able to make all kinds of throws. You've got to use his strength, and I have hopes that he will.
It remains to be seen. Okay. All right. That's this one. I think we've spent a good amount of time on the Patriots, but the NFL playoffs are still going on. So let's quickly get down to the two games Saturday and then the two games Sunday. Let's start
Mhm.
off with it's a potential rematch in Kansas City and Houston. Houston definitely being a surprise team, beating the Chargers at home. And then the second matchup is between Washington Commanders and Detroit on the road for Commanders. I call them the cardiac Commanders for the number of close wins they've had. Then on Sunday, you have the NFC matchup between the Eagles and Packers, followed by, of course, the marquee
No, no,
matchup,
no, not
Ravens.
Packers, right?
And
Sorry, not
no, no,
Packers.
no. I think yeah, Packers and Eagles. No, not Packers and Eagles. Sorry, Eagles and Rams. I'm
Yeah,
stand corrected. Yes,
yeah.
correct. And it's going to snow there. And then you have Ravens taking on the Bills at the
Yep.
Highmark or Orchard Park, whatever you call it right now, the stadium.
Yep.
So let's get down to the Chiefs and Texans. I mean, the Texans definitely surprised us. CJ Stroud right now. I think I saw a stat said that he has had more playoff wins than like Jameis Winston, same number of playoff wins like Dak Prescott. So there you go. Not saying much. His comparison is pretty low. But
Mm.
how do you fancy this game going? And then two, what do you think? If you pick the Chiefs here, what do you think that the Houston Texans have to do to register a major upset and prevent the
Right.
Chiefs from
Yeah.
getting closer to their three-peat goal?
Yeah. I think Chiefs are going to win this game quite easily in the end. Maybe the first half might be a little bit close. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think Chiefs are going to win easily because I don't see how the Texans are going to score more than 10 or 13 points. Did you know that CJ Stroud's average passing yards this year was only 220 yards? It's pretty low.
Yeah, I did think that because there was a lot of comparisons made in the middle of the season about him and
Right.
Caleb Williams, and CJ Stroud definitely had a low year, right?
Yeah. It
But
wasn't great at all. Now
he
I know he
wasn't great
lost
though.
receivers and all that, right?
He did
They
lose a
lost
lot
some
of
like
receivers.
picks.
Yep, yep.
Then
He lost Tank Dell.
Nico Collins was gone for some time, and now Tank Dell is gone. So now he doesn't have Diggs or Tank Dell, and so I think they've a little bit shortchanged. I mean, they've got a good tight end and they've got one really good receiver, but Chiefs have a and well, what worked for them against Chargers was Joe Mixon and their defense. I mean, this has been the story every year for the past many years, at least for the past couple of years. All these teams with great running games come to play the Chiefs, and guess what the Chiefs do? They stop their run.
Stop the run.
They take away their bread and butter because they're so damn good at it. And so it'll come down to Stroud having to pass, and then that pass rush comes into play. And plus, we've given Andy Reid and Mahomes and Kelsey and all these guys like 3 weeks to scheme up, different things. They're all well rested. I mean, I guess they could be rusty. That would be one concern I would have if I were a Chiefs fan. But I think Mahomes is just too good. So I don't think this is going to be a close game. I think these guys are going to be chasing the whole time. The only chance you ask me, what do they have to do? I think they have to get turnovers. I think that's kind of the only chance that they have. They have to give their offense short fields, and their offense will have to be very opportunistic. For them to win, it will have to be one of those games where statistically they get dominated by the Chiefs, but they get touchdowns, they get some turnovers, and they force the Chiefs to take field goals. Like that's how I can see it happening. But we've seen this movie. I'm not falling for this again and again. We've seen this movie too many times where Chiefs in the playoffs. I mean, nobody has beaten them, right? Last few years, right? They've been to every AFC Championship game, so they're definitely reaching the
I
AFC
think
Championship. And
the only
even
two
then,
losses I can remember are one against Burrow and then one
well,
Brady.
Brady, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's going
and then
that when
Brady.
I say Brady, that goes a long time.
Well, and then Brady got them in the Super Bowl at least once more,
Yep,
right? So,
right.
but
So
otherwise, those guys have been just good. So, anyway, that's what I think about the game. I don't think it's going to be particularly close.
I agree with that too. I think they're going to, easily roll over the Texans. So the second matchup that night is I call them the Cardiac Commanders, who survived a last second field goal, going and playing Detroit. Detroit has been playing well, like this year. I mean, they won the
Yeah.
division. And how do you see? And even though they lost a running back, they still have Gibbs.
No, he might be back.
He might be back now. Oh,
Yeah,
really?
Montgomery, I think, is going to play. I think.
He's going to play. Okay, I
I
thought
mean,
it
he's
was still
planning to play.
questionable.
I haven't looked at injury reports or whatever. It's
Exactly.
too early.
Yeah, it's Wednesday. We don't know if something changes tomorrow, but they still have Gibbs. They do have like
Oh,
other
they are dynamic. Yeah, they're really
dynamic.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Now, the defense is liability. They did play well against Minnesota, but
Mm.
their defense is liability. Yeah, I think, I do think Detroit is going to win. And in the end, probably comfortably. But I do think Jaden Daniels will keep it close for some time. I think I really like what he has done. He's
Hmm.
just amazing. I'm actually I'm not surprised he's done so well because he was so good out of college, and again he's a very experienced QB. Like he again has like started a bunch of games. He's a more mature guy. Uh, the surprising part to me is how he hasn't gotten really hurt. You look at him. I mean, even the other day when I was watching that game against Tampa Bay, he's running like reckless. I mean, he's just running, and he's just puny guy. He looks like a very puny. You look at his arms; they're like this
It's
thin.
almost like a Kyler Murray running, right? It's like,
But Kyler Murray is thick, actually. So Kyler Murray, he's a short guy, but he's thick. This
yeah,
guy is just skin and bones. And I mean, remember like in the end of the game to almost ice the game, he ran for that first down and like just
yes,
kind of leaped and like So he, I mean, very tough guy. What I'm pleasantly surprised is he hasn't gotten hurt. So,
very true.
but anyway, I think he's very dynamic. I think he's got a winner gene in him. I think this is one guy to watch. I hope May can be that like him someday. Like this guy is like already he's bringing his team back from deficits and this and that, playing in tough environments. He's overcoming many challenges. So I think he'll keep it close, maybe for the first half, but I think Detroit pulls away.
Okay. Yep. I see it's going the same way as well. I mean, as much as the Commanders have been the story of the season. Obviously, they didn't win the division, but they gave everything to handle for the Eagles. But they won multiple games in last second, including the Chicago game, and there's another game. I think, and then the last game, the playoff game itself
Mm-hmm.
against Tampa. So, like you said, the clear cut, um, how you measure a quarterback is that
Mm-hmm.
how they bring their team from the doldrums, diversity. I mean, from also like being like in a deficit,
Mm-hmm.
and then above all, making sure that not just making plays, by throwing the ball, but also making plays by running the ball and getting those critical first downs. And that's how it is, though. So both of us are picking the Lions over the Commanders. So I get that. So the next one is and I think I did refer to this Eagles taking on the Rams. The Rams are coming off a I mean, I would say very impressive victory over the Vikings. I thought this would be a shootout, but the Rams defense really shut down Sam Darnold.
Hmm.
It seemed like he was seeing ghosts, like he saw against New England. A 9 touch sacks. Just watching the game, it was very disappointing. I mean, he didn't have much of a chance against. The Rams are definitely, again, offensively, the Rams are really good in terms of distributing the ball very well. You have Kieran Williams, the running back. You have Puka Nakua. You have Higby, and you have Cooper
Yeah, they have
Cup. I mean,
weapons.
Cooper Cup didn't even have a great game, but he didn't have to have a great game. So going all the way to the Eagles, and the Eagles have the questions of their own. I mean, AJ Brown only caught one pass. Jalen Hurts only threw for 130 plus yards in that game last time.
They
So
just
how do you
ran the
see that
ball on
going?
them. That's all they did. Yeah. And I think that would be a very dangerous thing to do against the Rams. I think the Rams will, I'm hoping this will happen and I think it'll happen. The
You're
Rams
breaking
will,
up again.
I hear you clearly. I don't know what's wrong. Is it okay now?
No, I can see you. I can see you, but I can't hear you properly. But
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So I
Okay.
was saying, I think the Rams will force Eagles to throw the ball. I think they'll be solid in their run defense. And Eagles have the weapons. Like one game, I want to see that out of Jalen Hurts. And if I see him throw 300, 350 yards when the run game is not really working well, then I would say, man, that team is really good. Now, it might very well happen. Their defense is playing lights out. Eagles, they are really dominant. Like they're a very strong defense, like a Kansas City defense. I would compare them to that. And so I think it's going to be hard for the Rams to protect Stafford. I'm picking the Eagles in the end, but I think this could be a close game. I mean, you never rule Stafford out. He's a fighter. Those guys are fighters. So I think this is going to be a close one, but the Eagles will win.
Yeah, and plus with the weather, I think I did hear the weather is going to be a factor in the game. This is a team from LA, and it's definitely. I feel that traveling. They have to go to Arizona Monday night. Now coming back, I think the Eagles are definitely having more rest in terms of extra rest. But now you're coming to the East Coast. There's going to be
Yep,
snow.
I
I
agree.
don't know how
I
much
agree.
it's going to be of the impact, but I agree with you. I think the Eagles will prevail eventually. I mean, the Rams are going to give them a fight, but it's going to come down to a field goal in the end, 24-21. I don't know, this is what I'm calling because the Eagles' defense is solid. Uh, that's where I see it. So finally, this is the marquee game. This is the game that we've all been waiting for. Unfortunately, one of these teams is going to get knocked out, which means that Kansas City doesn't have to play one of the two teams. So,
Yep.
I mean, Josh Allen, I mean, when the last game started, you had Bo Nix just march up and down the field, score a touchdown, and then that was it. But then the Bills definitely put on a show after that, and they didn't look back. And the Ravens, meanwhile, are coming off a high-flying win over their division rival Steelers. I mean, I was just talking about this in the podcast. Not only dominated the Steelers, they had 299 yards in rushing that included Lamar and Henry. And then
Hmm.
on top of it, they had a 40-minute possession of time against the Steelers.
Right.
This
I
is a
but
pick
that's
'em game. I've been wrestling on this game for a long time. When someone asked me, I think I said the Bills would win. And then I changed my mind because the Ravens are playing as good as it can. So let's see which of these two teams will pose a significant challenge to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship.
yep. I mean, well, both can technically because they're good. I think the Ravens are maybe a better all-around team. I know they're dependent on, but I think Bills are even more dependent on Josh Allen because if you look at his receivers, they're not that great, man. I mean, I think maybe his best weapons are like that Ty
I
Johnson
think
who's a
you're just
running back.
breaking up again, I think.
I don't know what's happening. I can see a full signal here.
The connection, I think. I can see you have like a good connection, but that's okay. Let's keep going.
Yeah, so yeah, even I'm torn. And I think I might give the edge to the Bills just because it's a home game for them. You know when two teams are equally matched, you kind of give a slight edge to the home team, right? So I actually think like as the from game one this weekend to game two to game three to game four, it's going to get closer and closer. Like the first game might be more of a blowout or a comfortable win. Then the Lions game, I think Washington will give some fight for sure, at least to the first half. Then the Eagles and Rams will be even closer, and this one might come down to the last play or something like that.
I mean, my heart says Buffalo. I mean, I think I really like Josh Allen. I respect him. He's a great quarterback. He brings his teams from this one. But again, the other thing is like Lamar. I mean, when you were talking about who was the MVP, I think the only reason why I don't think Lamar is getting the MVP right now is because of the fatigue, because he's already won it, right? So maybe they give it to somebody else. But having said that, just looking at Baltimore, Lamar and Henry, their defense is very like quite ferocious, and they can make some plays. And then they offensively, one thing that has happened to Baltimore is that apart from having Henry in the running game, you do have other good players. They're likely, obviously, they have Mark Andrews. I mean, they do definitely have some good weapon for Lamar Jackson, and he can throw the ball. He's proved that he can throw the ball very
I
well. I
guess
mean, but
I
that
guess
was
it'll come
their
down to if Lee Flowers is available or not, right? Because he was injured.
yep.
He missed
Zay Flowers,
previous.
yeah, Zay Flowers, yeah. But the other thing is like if you no, that's fine. I mean, but if you look at how they lost last year, they, I mean, they made a lot of errors against Kansas City at home. That's
Right.
number
They should have
one.
won that. Yeah.
They should have won the game, yes, but they made a lot of errors, a ton of errors. And then they became very one dimensional. And then, like you said, right? I mean, if you're one dimensional, it's going to be very tough winning any games in the playoffs. So,
I think both
so
teams can run the ball very well and they can throw as well. And both defenses are okay, not great. Like Bills
yeah.
defense has
And
definitely
you're
shown
picking the
vulnerability.
Bills, I
Even
think, right? You're
Baltimore.
picking the Bills, right? Are you picking the Bills
Barely
to
picking the
move
Bills. Yeah. I think logic dictates it's going to be a high scoring game. You
on? Yeah,
never know. Even if it's not high scoring, the offenses will dominate. Sometimes when the offenses dominate and when they're running the ball, the game actually is not very high scoring
yeah.
because each drive is that much longer and some
Yeah.
of those end up in a field goal. So, but I think this will be like one offense going against the other offense, and whoever's the last position wins kind of game. I would give Bills a slight edge. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go the other way. I think Lamar has been playing as good as
Mm-hmm.
anyone has, and I know, and to say that this team actually started 0-2,
Right.
and guess who they played in the first game of the season? They did play Kansas City. Came down to that very controversial game-tying touchdown that was called out of bounds and on a fourth down play, and that's how it ended. I feel that Lamar has something to prove. I feel that they will not only beat the Bills, but I do feel that they will they will pose a significant threat to Kansas City in the AFC Championship. So that's why I'm sticking with the Ravens. And I know you said the Bills, very close. I debated this back and forth. In fact, at one point, I might have told somebody that I think the Bills are going to win. But then I've changed my mind. I don't know. I think, and not that Bills are not hungry, but I think Lamar is playing as good as he can right now.
And whoever
A
is
good
going to win
supporting
that
cast.
game, whoever is going to win that game is going to have 1.5 days less to prepare
Yep,
than Kansas City,
that
and
is
then they have
true.
to travel to Kansas City.
Yep, I
Don't,
agree with that. I
don't
agree with that. I
discount those
mean,
things.
yeah. Well, I think when you are the number one seed, those are some of the perks you get, right? So
I know, but I don't know why Kansas City had to get like the first game like Saturday. Like they could have played on Sunday, but
Sunday night,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So it's a little bit unfair, I feel.
so I think we're aligned in three of the matches, and then we are, I think, barely. You said, uh, you said the Bills. I'm going to say the Ravens. So
Mhm.
so I think, and then it's going to be, Chiefs and Ravens for me, and then for you, it's going to be Chiefs and Bills.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you have Eagles taking on Lions, and I think I agree with that too.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's where we are, Amit. I mean, I think there's more to come once Rabel makes the selections. I think we're going to have much more to talk about from the Patriots standpoint. But
Yep.
until
Definitely.
then, I think this has been great. I mean, covering both the Patriots stuff, both on all three phases of the game, and then we quickly talked about the playoffs. So looking forward to these games weekends, and looking forward to what Rabel will do to pick his staff.
Yep.
So
Excited for sure.
thanks and good night, and then hang on a bit, and then while I stop the recording.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.